Good morning, everyone, and welcome to that morning after the night before, as Huddersfield Town somehow throw away a 2-0 lead to the bottom of the league club. We are Huddersfield Town Social. My name's Greg Marah. Joining me, fresh from his appearance on Radio Leeds, is Nick Barlow, Cameron Pope, who's got the corona, Kaye, and making his debut after, unlike some people who tend to bottle it, Tristan, Batley, Kaye. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for all joining me. We'll start with Wycombe and the game itself, cruising after 35 minutes. You know, I had two screens on. I was watching a bit of the rugby and a bit of football. I was quite happy and comfortable and thought, oh, Phil's timed that statement perfectly. And then it all went wrong. For probably about 35 minutes on, actually, we were terrible. And it was inevitable what happened to us. It looks a team devoid of any confidence, but a team devoid of any quality. And utilising Jonathan Hogg in completely the wrong position, no midfield. I can't really describe it, but Wycombe were very much worthy winners.
Well, I spent a good half an hour this morning in preparation trying to write a good opening piece, and I just couldn't think of one that did it justice, so I'm just going to say it how it is. This was the low point of my week, that second half, or even that final hour, which is quite surprising given the fact that I got COVID on Monday. It was just the most difficult viewing we've had to go through in about 10 years of following Huddersfield Town. I think it was Greg that mentioned to me the 3-0 lead we had at Bury about a decade ago that we squandered and drew 3-3. That's in the same ilk, and that's the only time I can think of a performance that went so horribly, horribly wrong at half time. Looking at it, Wycombe, the last time they scored 3 in an away league game was back in September 2019. That was against Rochdale in League One. And 5 of those who started that game played yesterday. We shipped 3 goals to a League One side, one that is struggling like no one has struggled in the Championship in recent years. They'd scored 18 goals in 27 league games. On Saturday, they scored as many against us as they did in the last 5 league games. And the worst thing is we deserved it. We deserved it because we didn't have a single shot on target in the second half to their 5. I'm not quite sure what flashscore.com labels as dangerous attacks. I think it's when you step into the attacking third. Well, whatever they were, we had 8 of them. Wycombe had 29 in the second half. And that's 4 times now in the Championship. We've lost from winning positions at half time. We've only led 9 times. So we're almost as good at throwing away games as we are closing them out. Teams know that they're only 1 goal away from panicking us. And that is why we are everyone's ideal team to play against now.
Well, I think I want to start by congratulating Wycombe. Actually, I actually thought they played quite well yesterday. Wycombe, even at 2-0 down, they didn't panic. But I thought 2-0 flattered us. The first 15 minutes we controlled it. We scored a good goal, but then we seemed to just change stance. Our second goal for me was against the run of play. They'd had 2 or 3 really good chances, a couple off the line. But you have to credit where credit's due. The second goal was a goal of real quality. So you looked at that, and in true form, we couldn't see it out. Mehmet, who played in centre mid in a bit of a free role for Wycombe, caused us problems all afternoon. I noticed at the start of the second half, Carlos had stuck Bayeko, on his toes to try and stop him from playing. But even that made no difference. The second that goal went in, and it was 2-1 at half time, a blind man on a galloping horse could see what was coming. And when you talk about quality, the irony is I think our starting 11 was of a better quality than theirs. I think you'd struggle to say that isn't the case. But what was interesting when you look at the bench, I felt they had a better bench than we did. The Jonathan Beater on there, who's still a decent player. The winger who came on to replace McCleary, whose name I can never remember, but the boy's lightning and causes problems with defenders. So, in some ways it wasn't a surprise. And I think at 3-2, I was speaking to my son on text, and he turned off at 3-2. He knew the game was done, and he was probably right. I feel a bit disappointed. Excuse me. I feel a bit disappointed. There was zero level of commitment to the cause. Once we'd gone level, certainly we were treading water, and a poor and limited team really completely dismantled Town in the second half. Completely dismantled them. We just can't seem to deal with any kind of setback during a game. The mentality looks fragile, and that's before you talk about the physical ability and the injuries that we're carrying. So, yeah, disappointing day, but as I say, you have to give credit where credit's due, and I thought Wycombe came and again, like a lot of teams now, did a job. they know what they need to do to get a point or 3 points from us, and we played right into their hands.
Look, this game just encapsulates everything that's wrong with Huddersfield Town at both ends of the pitch. Wycombe conceded by far the most goals in the league. You can see why. First goal for Town, good passing, but nobody picks up Bakuna. He's in acres of space. I probably could have got that header in. Second goal, it's a decent finish from Mbenza, but again, he's given plenty of time. No one gets a foot in. Keeper probably should have done better. But then you look at the goals that we've given away for Wycombe. There's a lot of people having a go at O'Brien, playing left back, but actually all the goals came down the other side. And Pieper, as good as he is attacking, I think he leaves a lot to be decided defensively. But if you look at the goals in isolation, Mehmeti, nobody gets a booting on him. And the warning signs were there way before that. I agree, guys. I think as soon as that goal, our first goal went in, we kind of mentally, it looked like we'd switched off. It looked like we thought it was job done. All right, so it's only Wycombe now. We've got a goal up. Wycombe puts feet up. And before our second goal, I thought Wycombe were getting back into the game. I thought the second goal was against the run of play. And the warning signs were there. Just before the goal, I think Sarr cleared one off the line. And you knew what was coming, and you just think, right, just hold out to half time, go in at 2-0, regroup and go again. But we switch off, no one gets a foot in on Mehmeti. Good finish, to be fair. But they're just far too easy. Second goal, Hogg, Kaye, don't deal with it, the big guy. Is it Panzo? I'm trying to remember what his name is. But nobody gets a challenge. And if you're going to bring him down and challenge him, do it outside the box. They have plenty of opportunity to bring him down. And then at least you give a free kick away, but you can regroup. Nobody does it. It allows him to get into the box. Easy penalty. I'm going to score it all day long. And then the third goal, Sarr doesn't deal well with the header. He loses out. One of our players heads it into his own box. I don't know who that is, but appalling header. And again, nobody's picked Knight up in the box. There's nobody near him. And it's a good finish. But it's just whether it's lack of concentration, whether it's tiredness, whether it's nerves. I don't know what it is, but we always have to work so hard to score against teams. And the teams against us, it's just a walk in the park. We just gift goals away all the time. Looking at the other end of the pitch, 54% possession, RXG 0.9. Compared to Wycombe's 1.73. We only had 4 attempts on target all game. We had 460 passes compared to their 287, which just shows that, you can have as many passes and possession all day long, but we're doing nothing with it. It's not constructive possession. It's just, to me, to you, sideways, backwards, no cutting edge whatsoever. Wycombe had 11 shots from inside the box. We only had 5. So no matter what we were doing, it wasn't working. And we just constantly persist with this notion of trying to play attractive football, being patient, and that's fine. But when it's like 10 minutes to go, when you're drawing with Wycombe, down at the bottom end of the table, that I think prior to this, won one away game all season, and that were against Birmingham, who were terrible themselves. You've got to mix things up a bit, and I think we did eventually stick Sarr up front for the last few minutes, but it's too little too late. But then, I want to have a go at the manager, and in most circumstances, 99% of the time I would be, but then you look at the bench, you look at the options to bring on. Who's coming on? Who's coming on to change it? Pritchard. Oh dear. It's a culmination of factors how we've got to this position. And I honestly, looking at these fixtures, I cannot see where the next point's coming from. Borough, yeah, they're on poor form, but look where they are in the table. Always difficult to play against. Derby, picked up. Swansea, looking really good up there towards the top. There's only one way we seem to be going here, lads, and that's down to League One.
Yeah, I can't really come on and defend anything that you've all said, to be honest. I thought yesterday going kind of 1-0 up, maybe not quite 2-0 up. I completely agree with Gareth that I thought we scored against run of play completely. But I was thinking, well, this is going to be easy tomorrow. I'll go on and, I can gloat, I can go on and spin this positiveness. And in all honesty, I think quite as Nick said, that as soon as Mehmeti scored, I just thought it just drained out of us. You could see the confidence and everything completely drain out of us. I think probably for me, and I guess to a certain extent, in the next couple of weeks, we might hope that we will get some of this. Last two games, Wycombe and Luton, I think both teams have been just full of energy, hard-working, honest, complete grafters. The odd player in there, I think Luton, there was that lad Dewsbury Hall, and yesterday Mehmeti, with a sprinkle of kind of a bit of quality in there. But let's be honest, that at Panzu yesterday, you could have put Jermaine McGilvery up front, and it were exactly the same thing, wasn't it? It was power, it was strength, it was pace, and we just couldn't deal with it at all. That being said, I thought we did start pretty well, and I thought Lewis O'Brien actually offered something to us that we've been missing from both Pippa and Toff in the last few weeks. And I think both of them started the season kind of a rate of knots, and both of them just looked quality. And I think they both looked quite tired, and where at the start of the season they would look for quite cute passes, quite considered passes, it now seems to be just sling it in box. And I thought yesterday O'Brien's movement actually gave us some of that back. I thought Campbell had obviously been on Twitter and Instagram and wherever last week, because he came out trying to show that he was, there was something more about him. He huffed and puffed quite a bit. He obviously set the goal up. He looked busy, but I think that highlighted something that at the start of the season we were all raving about, and was that actually, I don't actually think that when Campbell went outside of the box, many people got into the box behind him. I thought Holmes should have been the person that got in there. I appreciate when Campbell put the ball back in for Bacuna. Bacuna was there, but I think probably if you looked at who else was in there, I don't think there was many other players in and around there. And that was something that we set almost our game on at the start of the season. Other than that, I think Sarr, is the sublime to the ridiculous, isn't he? And I thought this was one of his better games, if I'm honest with you. I think, as Cam said, he cleared two off the line early doors in the first half. And I actually thought he didn't in the first half waste the ball quite as much. I thought second half he was really trying to push the ball into the midfield, and I think it had just gone. And I think that just summed us up. As soon as that goal went in on half time, we just went. And when we had people like Moy, people like that, they'd go and grab the game by the scruff of the neck. Even you'd hope Hogg would go and do it. Probably doesn't have the quality, but you'd hope he'd go and bang someone in a tackle or something like that, just to galvanise people. And they just don't seem any of that. And I just think that we seem to have lost that high intensity that kind of was our game, to be quite honest with you, at the start of the season, and that we were quite kind of enjoying. It just seems to be quite turgid, and we just seem devoid of ideas once that kind of fizz goes out of us, I guess.
You're right about Pieper and Toff. We've talked about it on here before. I think the way that Carlos wants the fullbacks to play, they've got to have energy. They've got to get up and down the pitch, and those two have got it. I think nobody's doubting Pieper's quality. Certainly not as an attacking force. I think there's a few questions about his defensive abilities, which is valid. But I think we highlighted a need for some extra legs at full-back, some options to give those lads a rest when they needed it, and we chose not to sign anybody. We stuck with Jaden Brown. Jaden Brown managed to knock himself out, it seems. I don't know if he dropped his wallet on his head or something. I don't really know, but that's the challenge. And I'm with you, Tristan. I was saying to my son, I thought the first 10 minutes, I thought Lewis O'Brien looked brilliant. He was so dynamic. They didn't know what to do with him. That number 2, every time he got the ball, he just knocked it past. Is it Grimmer, the right back? The bloke couldn't keep up with him. But of course, what happens then as we get pressed and drop deeper, that attacking intensity goes out of the game. People are still trying to get 40 yards forward and leaving big gaps, which means their players can dance through our right hand side down their left hand side. So I think you pretty much summed it up spot on for me, mate. And actually, I think you're right. I want to give Campbell a mention. I think we've given him some stick on here, and I thought yesterday his link-up play was excellent. I guess we'll talk about the incoming transfers and people who played, but I was really disappointed with Holmes yesterday. He contributed nothing for me.
On Fraser Campbell, and I watched him. It's what I end up doing. Obviously, when somebody gets a bit of stick, I used to do this with Naki Wells. When Naki Wells got a lot of stick, you've got to look at what Campbell does. Campbell's an effective striker when he's got two kind of inverted wingers or inside forwards up there with him. So when Josh Koroma was fit and firing, he's young, he's raw, he's probably not just the kind of championship prospect that we think he is yet, Koroma, but he's fantastic. Campbell's kind of movement was to take the centre backs out of the game. If he doesn't have the support, and he didn't have the support from either wing, because we've got a dearth of wingers. Dwayne Holmes isn't a winger; he's probably a pocket midfielder. Aarons is injured after coming in, and Benza, he's gone back to being Benza from beforehand. Clearly his move in January fell through. But you've got to get your best out of the players in the way they play. And I think Fraser Campbell's. We've given him some stick, rightfully so, but I think some of it's gotten a bit too much. If you've got to realise how he plays, and if you can't play to that person's strengths, you're in trouble. And Tristan, you mentioned Johnny Hogg there. Johnny Hogg was playing a completely unfamiliar position yesterday. Centre back, and then being asked to cover right back. And I'm sorry, I'm going to nick something. The resident Mike Bassett, who couldn't be asked coming on because he lost the game of Australian football. 3-0, #Kill Royale. Points out Hogg was having to cover right back because of Richard Keogh's basically lack of movement, because the way Carlos Corberán wants his centre-backs to play is to go out a bit wider, and you definitely see it early in the season with Richard Stearman. I think when Reg was playing, he could do it. Keogh can't, and that comes back to that disconnect between who was signing for what positions. I feel for Carlos a bit. I don't want to criticise him too much because he's probably been sold something and promised to be backed. He's gone to the transfer committee, as we always take the piss out of, and said, I need a centre back because we've got so many injuries, and clearly Critchlow, Noble and Reg aren't quite where they need to be yet, and he's been given Richard Keogh. It's telling, and if you're not going to back Carlos Corberán, why bring him in the first place, which is kind of the point. And that's why Johnny Hogg is getting pelters, because he's not playing a position he should be playing. He is a box-to-box ball-winning midfielder. We saw the best of him when he first came in with Clayton and Norwood around him. We saw him with Moy, even to an extent last season when we saw Smith Rowe could drive forward. We saw the best of him. Playing him as a kind of a centre-back to cover right-back, it's square pegs in round holes all over again.
I think there's two things to say there, isn't there? Firstly, as we put the Campbell point to bed, I think you're absolutely right. We can fall into the trap of measuring strikers just on their goal output, and you can't do that with Campbell because his reading of the game is like nobody else's. And without him, I don't think there is any link-up play between the midfield and the attack. He is that catalyst going forward. I'd hate to think what position we would be in without him at the moment, and he's just chipping with goals too. So I think he's definitely. I don't think we expect him to play quite as important a role this season. I don't think we expect him to play quite as many games. But I do think there'll be a renewal there, and I can definitely see that it will be a good move to have him again next year, no matter what level we're playing at. But then if you look at Hogg, exactly, we're playing him massively out of position in an unfamiliar role. It's not like sticking Lewis O'Brien at fullback. Hogg is not a defender. And so, again, we're looking at it and we're thinking, well, we're in this position because everything seems to trace back to recruitment, doesn't it? And the fact that you're having to fit and jam square pegs into round holes just shows that this was a mistake. The fact that Jaden Brown, is out with concussion, you can say that's unlucky, but that's what happens in the course of a season. You get players injured in training. We've not been prepared for it. We've not been prepared for it. We're wafer thin on the ground, and that's why now we're having to pull players out of jobs that they can do well to fill in for jobs that other players can't do. So one, it's the recruitment. We brought in the wrong players at at the wrong time. We didn't see the best of Dwayne Holmes yesterday by a long shot, which Kaye, I've never really been convinced that he was the right man for the job, and it was just a bum on a seat. And so again, we find ourselves now, our shortcomings are going to be amplified by the fact that, okay, we've lost Toppolo for 3 games now. We didn't have a full back to bring in. We've lost one of the ones we did have. So we have really Dehaney, if you want to stick him in there. I don't know, you look at it and you just think, right, well, this is all our own doing. And you could say you've had bad luck with injuries, but then when you cut down on the medical staff, I know we do like to, hold the candle out for Dr. John Eager, but this is what happens when you try and run it on a League One budget. And you don't have the support staff, and we get all these soft tissue injuries. And so you can't say that it's bad luck, because everything is fitting into this puzzle. And the root cause is we don't have enough bodies. We don't have enough bodies, and we don't have the right ones. And so exactly, I feel for Carlos, because there was nothing. He was on a hiding to nothing. There was nothing he could do with his squad to get us out of the mire. The best we could hope for was mid-table, okay, because we were in a nice position in December where we thought, okay, mid-table now, equal ground, probably nearer to the playoffs than we are to relegation, not going to go anywhere, but hey, this is okay. Well, that was the best it was going to get. Then the injuries started to come in. We hit that torrid run of Saturday midweek, dropping like flies. We had the promised land of January that never came to fruition, and we were never going to really bring anyone in. I think it was just a false hope, really. And so that was the best it was ever going to get. And now we're staring down the barrel of a gun, looking at all the teams below us with games in hand. And yeah, I don't see where the points are going to come from now. And so, I look at it and I think, okay, I feel for Carlos there. He can sold a dream and we've not delivered on it. However, we can't completely absolve him of the blame either. You've got to be adaptable in this line of work. And I think it was quite clear to everyone after the second half that it wasn't working. They were finding so much room in behind Pieper and O'Brien, and they were hitting us again and again and again. It was all one-way traffic that second half, and there was no change up. It was all one way. And so, it's hard for the first time now to say, okay, this is all on recruitment, because we do have to do better with what we've got, because like it or lump it, that is what we've got until the end of the season now. And you look at what we're trying to bring in, and we're trying to pad out our strike force with Umar Niasse if the rumours are true. But then by the time he comes through quarantine and visa checks and whatnot, we're going to be halfway through March. What's the point? We're going to have to sort this out with the players with the bodies we've got and the players we've got now. The ones that are fit. And so this is all our chickens coming home to roost. And so, we might end up re-recording this in a day's time. If Carlos Corberán gets the sack, who knows? But it's hard to say. It's just hard to look at, given that 1 year on, less than a year on, we're in a worse position than we were last year. Because at least last year, okay, we had a horrendous start and the Cowleys arrested the slide. And then, we almost dropped back in the last few games, didn't we? We pulled it out the bag. Now we are in free fall. We're in free fall. I don't know what's going to break the landing at the moment.
The really frightening thing, guys, is that we were lucky to lose 3-2 yesterday. If that's an half-decent championship side, that's 6-2 right there. They had so many chances. 2 cleared off the line. I think Hogan, Schofield makes a good save from point-blank header. So it could have easily been 6-2, and Carlos looked ill after the game, just stormed straight down. And I know he just walked straight off down the tunnel at the end anyway, but it looked a similar situation with towards the end of Sievert's reign, when you see images of like Devo and Phil storming straight off down, and Carlos just walking down the tunnel looking sort of broken. And I feel sorry for him. Like I know there's a lot of argument amongst the fans on Twitter saying, well, you can't put all the blame at the chairman's fault, and Carlos clearly is rigid to his style, and he is a bit stubborn sometimes in the way he plays. But to be fair, he's been brought in specifically to play that style of football. They brought him in knowing that that's his style and that's the way he wants to play. And he's been sold this ethos, this vision, and he's just not been supported. So, but then you can't have it both ways. If he wanted to mix it up and play football where it's just digging deep and grind out a result, we might as well just stick with the Cowleys, because the teams would have been a lot more organised, difficult to beat. It wouldn't have been as attractive football to watch, but we'd have got the results. And I know that's easy to say in hindsight now, but you bring in a lad in with not much experience of first team football. He's got this ethos, this idea of how he wants to play, and the chairman's bought into that and brought him in, and they've asked him to play this way. You must give him the tools for the job. You know, it's like setting me up in an office job and saying, right, we want you to do this job, and you've got a lovely office and everything ready, and then I sit down, there's no computer, you know, expecting me to work. You can't. You've got to be given the right tools to play the way that you want to play, and it just hasn't been backed for me. And to me, that's the root cause of the problem. That he's not going to change the way that he plays because that is his style, and we brought him in to play that style. To be fair, it's not his fault that the players out there capable of implementing his style. I honestly just don't know. I mean, I can easily see him walking, because you look at that statement from Phil and you think, well, he ain't going to be getting the players of the quality anytime soon to change things by the looks of it. So what's the future holding?
I think it's not, I mean, we're going on about recruitment like we always seem to do. I mean, we do nothing but moan about that. But, you know, the other side of Carlos's reputation was that he was a youth coach and he could work with kids. And I think what part of probably the dream he was sold by Phil was we had a B team, an under-23 team, whatever it was at the time, packed with potential superstars. And I think, you know, we've moaned about the amount of youth he's tried to squeeze into an individual lineup, and some of that's not through choice, that's through necessity. But I also think he's been sold a bit of a pup with that. I think he thought he was coming in and would be able to, as Leeds do, find one or two players every season that progress and play at a good level, and then they sell for big money. You know, and it's clear the vast majority of the kids, and it's not unkind to call them kids, aren't good enough. They're just not good enough, Nick. And I think that's been his battle. You know, I don't think he's demanding 6 or 7 signings, because I don't think that's not the Bielsa way. He likes a tight squad, doesn't he? So I can't see Carlos wanting a 35-man squad. I don't think that's what he's after. But what he was expecting, I think, was that the assets that were already in the club were of a much higher quality than they clearly are.
I suspect with that as well, a couple of years off, we've seen Ben Jackson, who was one of those who was supposed to be ready to make that step up. He's gone on loan to Bolton. Now he's getting regular loan time. And we've said that's probably the better way to do it. They need to go on loan for half a season, and then be brought into the squad. And perhaps we're 2 years off where that position's going to be. But also remember, Leeds United have a functioning academy, a proper academy, not what we have, because Dean Oil decided to scrap that for some reason. Probably the best time to keep it, because we were a Premier League club. There are some players in there, Ryan Schofield, Matty Daly, Reg, who are clearly close to being there, but they're a year or two off. It's about timing, and you know, time is everything in life, but especially in football. And if you don't get everything right, you are going to be in the situation that we're in. And especially when you look at that bench yesterday, and it's just to look at the bench. Pritchard's probably one of the only ones you could say maybe he can come on and change the game. And that's where we are. And I feel really, really bad as a Town fan at the minute, because Nick said it earlier, where's the next win coming from? But Nick also said something about the statement that came out on Friday, and it was just using that as a nice segue into it, because had we won yesterday, I think the timing of that would have been perfect. But the statement itself raises more questions than it answers, notably around wage bill, which seems to have gone up despite players leaving, and also enhances the disconnect between fans and the club, because there's a bit in there that mentioned that fans expect the club to spend millions, which, as we've seen, isn't really the case. They want a strong enough squad to compete. What did you guys make of that statement?
Well, I tell you what, way to ratchet up the pressure on what was already the biggest game of the season. I thought the timing was very strange. And yeah, okay, we could say that it would have been perfect had we won. Shouldn't come to that, because we should have won anyway. We were playing against a side who couldn't win for love nor money coming into Saturday's meet-up. So that was the first thing that struck me as very odd. It just seemed a really strange time to go straight to the press. And then I say go straight to the press loosely, because they didn't really. And this is the point I want to make. There was enough for some people, you know, and certainly encouraged a lot of Phil supporters to, you know, label any of the critics as doom mongering and and pessimistic. But for me, it was noise and not very much substance. Look, and I appreciated one part of it in particular, so I'm not going to be all negative about this. I appreciated his admittance that the judge me after 3 transfer windows claim hadn't come through. Okay, that was before COVID, yeah, we get that, okay. I think that COVID was thrown in a lot as an excuse, and we're forgetting that all 92 clubs in England have had to deal with COVID, and so I don't think it washes to absolve the club of all blame. But other than that, I don't think there was very much new in there. There was a lot of words. It took me about 10 minutes to read it all, and I don't think we learned a right lot from it. And so I saw a lot of fans praising Phil Hodgkinson for his openness as well, as if it were brave to publish a statement like that on your club's own website. But for me, that's not communication. You know, there's no dialogue with the fans. There was no chance to pose questions about that, and there was no risk of him being held to account. It's a monologue, you know. And so for me, my issue here is that, okay, I think a lot of the community now have come together and realising that something's going wrong, and there's a massive disconnect between fan base and the club. But if you're happy with that, I mean, you know, is it just, I wonder about that faction of supporters. Are you just wanting everything to go back to how it was and wanting everything to be okay, and so we'll just praise whatever comes out? We might have as well have had, you know, the reserve team's lunch menu published for all it told us. I don't think really that just throwing out some statement on the club's own website is going to answer a lot of questions. If you want to answer fans' questions, answer fans' questions, you know, whether that's in a live Q&A or questions submitted. Even an interview is better, and you can always choose what you answer and what you don't answer in that. But at least it wasn't just a monologue, because there was no chance to pick apart the figures, which I'm sure we will do in due course. There was no chance for any follow-ups. And so for me, it's lip service. I wasn't impressed by it. I really wasn't impressed by it. And so, you know, a lot of fans will still be happy to lap that up. And to them, I say, well, come on, you know, let's think critically about this now. And so if you're happy with a load of training photos and then one-sided statements, then okay. But for me, that's information, not communication. And as for what was said in it, well, you look at it again, and there was a lot of talk of how we've been very unlucky, but we create our own luck. We've got ourselves into this situation now, you know. We didn't recruit, and there was a very long roundabout way of saying we didn't recruit, right? But we can throw as many excuses under the sun out there. No one else quite finds us in as dire a situation as we are in the Championship now. The other 23 teams have dealt well with COVID. They knew what they needed. We knew what we needed, and what we needed at the very, very least was a striker, which we didn't get. And so, okay, one thing that stood out to me was the mention of Elijah Adebayo, the lad from Walsall. I imagine that was who was being referred to when we said that we were looking at bringing a player in late on deadline day, and then we decided for the move that was being proposed by his parent club that he would need to be an instant impact. Everyone we needed was an instant impact. You know, we brought in Sorba Thomas for the future. We don't need more B team players. Of course, we needed someone for instant impact. And I can say, if that's why we're claiming we walked away from it, well, Luton didn't mind. He's good enough for them. So why wasn't he good enough for us? I think it raises more questions than answers, and I don't think it answers very many.
From my perspective, obviously, I think this is probably the one true reason why I'm on, is kind of my different kind of perspective on things. I think with this, with the question and answer that he did in the cinema, with any single kind of communication that Hoyle did, it's sound bites. You know, every single bit of it is sound bites. And I guess to me, ultimately, what happens on the pitch dictates the mood, you know. And I think you're quite right, Cam. It was poorly timed. Hoyle, for the one thing that I will say he was exceptional at, was the PR and judging the mood of the room. And when he wanted to get a point across, he came and he put a point across. When he was ill and the club were going kind of absolutely south, I think it was in the January, he came out and he obviously made the famous "we're not sleepwalking into relegation" thing. And again, it was a soundbite. You know, it was judging what people wanted to hear at the time, and ultimately, it's irrelevant to me. I think you're only as good as what comes out on the pitch, and if that turns out, you know, well, then fair enough. As you quite rightly said, if we'd have won yesterday, it'd have probably it'd have probably dampened things down a bit. It wouldn't have stopped things, but it'd have dampened things down a bit. I think if we'd have, as you say, you know, we lost yesterday, and it's just magnified everything. I think that, if I'm honest with you, in football, we seem to, or certainly in my opinion, we seem to think that we deserve kind of a lot more than, you know, than any other industry. And I had this conversation with Ian on Twitter the other day, and he highlighted that football fandom's very different to anything else. And, you know, we go into grounds and we sing, and, you know, and we go and watch games down, you know, on a Tuesday night in freezing cold in Yeovil kind of thing, and all this kind of thing. And it don't make sense, you know. And I, if I'm honest with you, I think that quite honestly with you, we have to, or certainly in my opinion, we have to look at this as a business, you know, and here and now I'll say the striker thing we got wrong. Completely and utterly we got it wrong. But I don't think we can go out and spend money, if I'm quite honest with you. And I don't think Phil has the money, you know, and by that I don't mean that he's broke. I don't think he has the millions that Hoyle has. But I think he's probably got enough to run a football club. What I think probably where I differ from other people is this kind of my choice to look at it as a business. And I think one thing that is quite apparent to me is that I think probably fans want the club to run a little bit like, just for argument's sake, like a Burnley type club, you know, get into the Premier League, be savvy with signings and that kind of thing. But in order to operate like that, I think we have to operate more like a business. And I think the finances of the game are that messed up that if we were to try and go out and sign players, when the year that we went up, we were paying something like in wages and transfers, we were paying 153% of our income. So for every 100 quid that we paid, we were paying 153 quid out. How's that sustainable? You know, and let's be honest, we didn't go out and blow a budget on anyone. You know, I think we probably spent 5 or 6 million maybe the year that we went up, and we were kind of in that much of a deficit towards our income. Hoyle did bankroll us, and I think the difference here is that, you know, Hoyle has that ability to bankroll us, and I think Phil probably has the ability to keep the club on the straight and narrow, and that's about it. So I think for me there is something to come from this, and I think if I'm quite honest with you, you know, whether Phil came out on Friday night and said that, you know, I'm going to pile millions and millions in, I don't think that we're at a point now where fans have gone past that. The majority of fans have gone past that, and I don't think anything he said would have been any benefit to anyone, to be quite honest with you. And I think it would have raised questions no matter what he said. So I think we are at a bit of a stage where, you know, it's do or die. And quite honestly with you, I don't have the answers. I don't actually know where we're going to go with Phil, because I think for quite a large proportion of the fans, it's gone too far.
Well, I think a couple of things there for me, Tristan. I think that you're right. We're stuck with Phil now. I think we said this last week. The opportunity to get an investor who had pockets as deep as Dean's has been and gone. You know, we're not an attractive proposition. We're back to being a bottom end Championship, top end League One club that makes a loss. You know, that's not right attractive to anybody, is it? Our promotion was a miracle. You know, it genuinely was a once in a lifetime, in our lifetimes, miracle. And I think what what's the worst thing for me is it's a massive wasted opportunity. Dean's illness couldn't have come at a worse time. And although people will, and including me, have criticised him for deciding he wants a loan repaying that he said was never going to be repaid. That's his words, not ours, by the way. That's his right, and I don't think his illness helped. I think Wagner lost his nerve, but it does make me wistful. All this, I miss the real no limits mindset we had, not the pretend one that Phil says we've got at the minute. I mean the real one. We missed those stands jumping on a match day. I miss Christoph Buhler racing out of the dugout to celebrate a tackle. I miss a team who understood what it meant to a northern working class town to actually mix it and upset people. And it was a team full of players that cares, and that's what we've lost. We've genuinely missed an opportunity to set the club up to be competitive from here on in. And I'm with you. It's a business. I run a business, and my wife runs a business, and you have to manage your business accordingly. But the biggest thing that came, I made many notes about Phil's, let's call it a review. He started to call it a review, didn't he? The one that concerned me the most, I'll probably bore you with a couple of others in a minute, but when he got to said, I've got 2 comments he wanted to clear up. First of all, I was gutted he wasn't going to clear up whether West Vale Squash Club was open or not. I was gutted. But actually, what worried me more was, beyond the 3 windows thing, which was a complete contradiction to what he said previously about this summer being the biggest transfer window. If that was the case, you would never complete it in 3, Phil, were you? Was the fact that, he's admitting he didn't have the cash. So he's telling us he was going to run Huddersfield Town through profits made through Pure Group. He doesn't have the personal cash reserves to fund the Championship club. When he took over, he said, and nobody made him say this, I can fund this club to the level that Dean did, and I will. Now, I appreciate COVID has changed the scenario, but what he's admitting was, if he was going to do that, he was doing it through his business enterprise. That's not sustainable. He's the one that's using debt reduction and sustainability as a reason for running the club as we are. So that's a big contradiction. I mean, the wage bill thing, he's saying the wage bill now is 19 million quid. Okay, I take that as read. I have to, I can't dispute that. Our wage bill when we got promoted was 12 million. Our turnover was 11.3 million the year we got promoted. So your 15 million including transfers is probably right, Tristan. But 12 million at football inflation rates in 4 years, 19 million is probably less than 12 million in equivalent terms. He talked about getting value for wages going forward. Well, I have to be honest, the ones he's brought in, I haven't seen many that look value for the wages he's paying. So that's a complete contradiction. He says he can balance it. He believes he can strike a balance between reducing the debt and making sustainable. Well, I've yet to see that. He admits the striker was left to the last minute, and that's really interesting that you said, Cam, about Luton deciding he was worth it. Well, Luton's head of recruitment, head of football operations, is Mick Harford. Now, you can dispute whether Mick was a quality footballer or not, but what he is, he's experienced. He played at an international level, and he knows Luton Town inside out. He knows the club. He knows what it needs. He knows what the fans want to see. They've decided he's worth it. We've decided, in our great knowledge, he was only good enough to play for the under-23s. And I think my biggest concern with all of this, when you go back to Hoyle being great at the PR, what Hoyle did have, he did have some people around him who could feel it. Hoyle was one step removed from the fans. He wasn't on Twitter. He wasn't on social media. I know his sons were, but he got it fed. People like Sean Jarvis, who, if anybody wants to go and read his Twitter replies last night about why he's no longer at the club, is worth reading, because he confirms what we believe, which is the senior management in Huddersfield Town is an echo chamber. It's people telling each other things they want to hear. And whilst ever we've got that kind of mentality at the top of the club, we're only heading one way. Put the money to one side. We've got Phil now. It is what it is. And I'm with you. Do I like him personally? I don't even know the bloke, so I ain't got an opinion on whether he's a nice guy or not. How would I know? And I've said many times on here, he's got a damn sight more money than I'll ever have. He's wealthy. He's a wealthy individual. So that is not a debate for me. My debate is he setting himself up to give himself the best chance of success? And I don't believe he is. He wouldn't run one of his pure companies in that way. He will recruit and headhunt the best management team he can find in an industry. And what have we got? Marsh and Bromby. So Phil's going to do us another review in a month. I've made a list of 5 things, Phil, not that he's listening. I've made a list of 5 things that I'd like to see. First of all, I think either Carlos needs his staff bolstering with some experience, because the management team in the dugout are as bad. It's him, two mates, and Danny Schofield. They're all telling each other what they want to hear. It needs bolstering with somebody with some experience. I want Marsh and Bromby gone. I want him to get an experienced head of football operations in, because I don't think Carlos needs changing definitively. I hope Mark Devlin gets some cufflinks for Valentine's Day, and that's really important. But most of all, what I like is that he would start to think outside and start to look for additional investment. He owns 75% of an asset. Sell some of the asset. You can still retain control if that's what you want. You know, and Dean needs to be willing to look at supporting additional investment in the club. If he gets his debt repaid, which it looks like he will, he owns 25% of the club for nothing. You know, if he cares for the club as much as he says he does, help Phil use that shares to find some money, because that's what we're going to need. We're going to need some additional investment. But whilst, to be honest, Phil could be a billionaire, but whilst ever he's being told what he wants to hear by people around him, he'll never make the right decision for me.
Can I add something onto that as well as understanding whether Westfield Squash Club is actually open or not? I think we really need to know that. I agree, by the way, with the point of experience. I was having this conversation on Twitter this morning with Charlie Johnson, who used to do a bit of writing on town. We were saying that Wagner had Mike Marsh, who went to do England 17s, and now I think he's Swansea's first team coach, if I'm right. And Lee Clark, when he was young, had Derek Fazalakari, who Sven decided to pinch in 2011 when he pinched Peltier as well. But I think, and I don't want to say where the roads' money is, but you know, we did sell quite a lot of players in the summer. In Grant, he's 15 million over 5 years. Over Mounier, who scored a banger last week. You know, so they all went for fees. So there is a good pot of money still coming into the club. I know COVID's lost out in wages, etc. But a bit more of a blueprint about how the B team's going to work, because what we've seen so far is Danny Grant's come in from Ireland. I know he's picked up an injury. Sorba Thomas has come in. But if you're going to fill a B team up kind of like Brentford has, you need, and again, it's investment that we probably don't have at the minute, but you need to be signing 7, 8 of them players every year, not just 1 or 2. Because otherwise, what they're going to be is options for the first team squad if you're struggling, as we saw with Sorba Thomas making his debut yesterday. If we are going to have a vision for the future that's a little bit more sustainable, there needs to be a blueprint that fans can get behind, because, Gaz, he said it, the no limits thing, the Wagner revolution, it's something the whole collective town community got behind. When Dean first took over the club with a season ticket offer and kind of Lee Clark's attractive football, I know Turnip was there for a while with his champagne football and beer money. I mean, you know, some people are expecting champagne football on bloody Tesco value beer money, as I saw on Twitter the other day. If we have that blueprint and we have that vision, I think it's something we get behind. So I would like to see a little bit more from that. But that goes back to Cam's point of two-way communication, because people need to ask those questions. And you're not going to get those questions asked by a statement or even an interview in the Examiner or even on Radio Leeds. Unless your dad's doing it, Cam, we can butter him up with some questions. But we need a bit more of that two-way communication, because, you know, we put something out on Twitter earlier asking what people wanted us to talk about today, and one of the points is from Neil Hutchinson. I hope you don't mind me using your surname, Neil. Tell me off otherwise, and I won't do it again. But you know, he's asked how if fans can't go to games, can we push for change at the top of the club? It has to happen, or fans like him are never going to return. It's that engagement that's going to keep fans like Neil, and that vision that's going to keep fans like Neil, in my opinion, I might be wrong, taking his point out of consideration, how you keep them engaged. And because if changes aren't made, as you said, guys, Bromby, etc., and the transfer committee, then we are just going to be in this situation, and we're going to be a League One team, potentially in a league with a salary cap, which is going to disproportionately affect us more than anyone else, because probably if Sunderland and Ipswich are still in there, we are the biggest clubs. It would be the biggest clubs in that division, maybe even Birmingham if they get relegated, and we have to spend the same as Rochdale.
We don't have the best track record of spending money, exactly, do we? And I think that's something that maybe needs to be shouted a bit louder, because I think I've seen a lot of romanticisation of the relegation to League One. We can hit the reset button. It doesn't work like that. It certainly doesn't work like that anymore. Look at, does anyone, if anyone's got a Netflix subscription, they'll know exactly what we're talking about. There's so many big clubs stuck in that bottleneck of League One, and it just doesn't happen. It's a difficult league to get out of, and it's a lot tougher and better contested than it was, I think, when we left it 8 years ago. So that's not the answer. It really isn't the answer. And so yeah, but how do you get fans back on side? Well, obviously the obvious aside, in that results and performances just have to improve. There's other things we can do in the meantime, because that's not going to happen overnight. The slump isn't going to arrest itself, over the course of the next week as much as we'd like it to. And so one thing amongst all this that I thought they could do well this week was the return of Boothie's beer and banter. I thought, okay, good, there we go. We're getting back to something that reaches out to the fans. It's not something really for fans of my age range, if I'm honest. But for those of a different generation, I saw a lot of people tweeting about how good that was, and they felt connected with the club. Brilliant. That's exactly what people need in lockdown. Something to reach out to faces that will bring back fonder memories than the current performances will. That was right. I still think we need to reach out to the younger members of the fan base, and because players like Phil Starbuck, etc. I'm sure it's great if you were watching Town in the 90s, but for those for those 90s kids like me, it's not really gonna. It doesn't really help. So again, you need to reach out to the younger fans. And Gaz made a good point that young fans now ain't going to be interested in watching Town, because there's this disconnect. There's nothing really for them there. And so I think more has to be done for that sort of 20 and underage range, really. And whether that's, even if the same mold works, just getting players on that we've seen in the last 20 years and having them speak to younger fans, etc. It's just better that way, isn't it? Because then there's something for everyone. So it was a step in the right direction, I thought, for the club. But all this is going to be, extra to results on the pitch. And this is really damage limitations, I think, just keeping the fans involved, because they're going to vote with their feet next season when we're allowed back in, hopefully, and that's going to be majorly dependent on results. And so this could be the difference between getting 10,000 people in through the door and 12,000. But then you don't want to miss out on those fundamental years where kids are going to go off and support Arsenal and Chelsea and Leeds. And so step in the right direction, but a lot to do still, a lot to do, because we've been seeing sellouts 20 or 24,000 most weeks for the last few seasons, and of course that's going to slip slightly with every division you drop. But we're going to be seeing half that again now. And I never thought I'd see that again, where he turned up and, me and my mates, and my mate's dad used to guess the attendance on the walk down past the gas club, and it usually used to be about the 12,000 mark. I thought that were, something from days gone by. Well, that's going to be returning very soon. And so, yeah, it's damage limitation now. And whilst there's good signs, needs to be more done for the younger, because that's the future of the club. And that's where you're going to get your support from. And we're going to have an ageing fan base if we don't connect with them.
Just to jump in, I think you make a really good point there, Cam. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen various people. The one that you mentioned, Gareth, about Sean Jarvis tweeting, and I'm going to get his first name wrong. Is it Peter Butler that used to play at Town? And I think he commented on it and was quite livid about what was going on. Someone posted something, a Facebook message that Bullock had put on, and he was absolutely seething. He couldn't, and last week Simon Trevitt had put something on about how Ed had gone with it, kind of thing. Perhaps that's, that just going back to the McArthur thing, perhaps that's what they need around the club a little bit more, a bit more honesty, a bit more passion, people that actually care a bit about the club, and I'm not saying that Darren Bullock's going to come in and be a kind of magician with the tactics or anything like that, but at least he might bring a bit of realism and a bit more, is not the yes person or the echo room, as you were saying before. Maybe that's something that could change things at the club, because there's certainly something that needs to change.
Nick, I know you're ready to speak, and I do apologise for interrupting, but you'd have thought with Danny Schofield being in the backroom staff, that'd be the perfect opportunity. You got John Worthington's involved as well. The two players that Cam, you're talking about your generation. that is your generation of player. That was a team that so many people fell in love with. I mean, Camden doesn't really remember the Wadsworth years like I do, but my first team were late '90s, so I don't really know Bullock as well as I know of him. But getting Scoffer and Worthington, who were two of the favourites, along with Andy Holdsworth, who I think he's at Chef Wednesday at the minute. There's a connection there, and they haven't been utilised enough. We all love Danny Schofield. He carried that team for so many years. He was a championship quality player in League One, or when he was playing alongside Danny Adams. There's your opportunity to do that at the club, and they're not utilising it.
No, and I agree with a lot of what everybody said. To be quite honest, my main concern is the impact of this on the fan base moving forwards. If you're like me, an idiot like me, that'll go regardless. We could be in League Two and I'd still go, because I go for experience. I don't go for entertainment, Christ. I go for experience. I go with me, sit with my mum and dad, and it's about the match day experience. But if you're not that way inclined and you're basing your decision to get a season ticket or buy a ticket based on entertainment value alone, you're reading these comments saying, "Look, we're going to have to make further cuts." And I agree with Tristan what you said. We are in a difficult financial time, and I understand the situation we're in now. The fact that we've gone from where we were in the Premier League to this situation now, I find absolutely atrocious. But we are where we are now. But we're essentially saying that the team we've got, we're going to have to make further cuts, and we're going to have to bring players in on lower wages. So essentially, we've got a team that's struggling to compete in the Championship, and we're going to have to make cuts to it. So looking forward, as a just a general fan, what have I got to be excited about that's going to make me want to buy a season ticket? And I'm to be honest, I'm struggling to think of a logical reason why you would get one. It looks like a club with sort of League One resources playing in the Championship, and to be fair, like the past, since we went up sort of 10 years ago, we've always struggled, haven't we? Barring that one-off season that we went up, we've been perpetual strugglers, and I think, to be honest, we will go down. Even if it's not this year, I think we'll go down the year after, because it's clearly just not sustainable for the club, and I do worry that we'll be back in a situation where we're down to about 8,000 fans. I think they'll be in for a shock with the season tickets. I mean, can you imagine the atmosphere yesterday at that final whistle? The looking away fans out there, because I could see some people outside front door banging on door asking to see chairman after that performance, and it's just not very good times at the moment. And that's my worry, that we're going to be back to a situation like I always remember Dean Oil when he said about that game against Southend, and we lost 2-0 at home, and everyone just got up and walked out as if it were just accepted that it was just a mediocre, poor performance, and there were about 8,000 in ground, and we were just going nowhere. And I just dread that we're heading back to them days. And yeah, there's people like me who's not just right in the head that's always going to be there, because it's a club I love, and it's more about the experience, and no matter what, the heartache it causes and the mental and physical drain on a match day that it causes, you always come back for more. A bit like a drug addiction, you always end up coming back. You can't help yourself. You can't stop coming back for more punishment. But a lot of fans aren't like that now. A lot of these younger fans, they don't remember those times, and they remember as having a team that was, you could get excited about the togetherness. You could get behind them. We were going places. All you want to see as a fan is a team that competes and that offers some form of entertainment. And unfortunately, over the past sort of 1, 2, 3 seasons, we've just not offering that. So I'm reading that statement and looking long term, it is what it is. We are where we are. I've kind of accepted that we're going to be back in League One at some point. I just don't think a lot of the other fans will, and I just hate there to be a situation where we're back to 8,000 in the ground again, because that in itself isn't sustainable. How do you get sustainable football club, by the way? We talk about sustainability. You name me one sustainable football club in Championship. Doesn't exist. What do we mean by sustainable? We're never going to make a profit. It don't work like that in football. It's very, very different to other businesses. It's all right when you're selling loads of merchandise and loads of tickets like Man United, and you can, but we're never going to, it's a town. We're always going to have a limited fan base and a ceiling on what we can sell merchandise-wise and hospitality. So what do we mean by sustainable? Because to me, that means sort of basement League 1, League 2 level.
Well, that's a great point, Nick. Because the last time Huddersfield Town were truly sustainable was when Ken Davey was in charge, and Ken Davey won't stump up a few £100 a week for Gary Hooper because he pointed out that Tom Clark was only on £150 a week. I don't see many 19-year-old footballers accepting £150 a week anymore. Obviously, inflation would change that, but it's that's not a wage, really, and that's what made that Jacko group of players extremely special. Is in effect, I always see 2003-04 as being a rebirth of Huddersfield Town, and at the minute I see the death of Huddersfield Town. And you know what? A lot of people blame Phil Hodgkinson here, and it isn't his fault. It is a culmination of events, and it starts with Dean Hoyle, I think. And obviously his illness did play some kind of part. But what he's done is gifted, in effect, the club to Phil Hodgkinson, and he's taken out all the money he put in and given Phil, in normal circumstances, it would be fine a relegated club. The assets are the stadium and the players. But the players, bar Grant and Mounier, were worth fuck all. And then you've got the issue with the shares, to which some bloke who's giving me shit yesterday on Twitter said, "Oh, I don't have an opinion on it." How can you not have an opinion on our biggest asset? You're backing Phil to a hill, but you don't have they're not in trust yet. So, Phil's been shafted by Hoyle, and to an extent, he's shafted himself. And we're in this situation just not because of one person. It's been. I still say the day that Stuart Webber left this club, maybe David Moss, has been a succession of error after error after error from your director of football operations not having one for the yonks, and then getting the wrong ones in to recruitment, to the way the club's been run. To we haven't even mentioned the OPE scandal and what was coming out of that. Was it The Athletic last week? Cam's nodding his head, so I must be right. All of this, Paddy Power, it's been a culmination of 3, 4, 5 years or 4 years of just error after error, and it will never get better than that penalty at Wembley. I don't think it will ever get better than that, and I think a lot of people have just got to accept that now. We want it to be better. We want that feeling, that rush, that excitement, that togetherness, but it's never going to be like that again, I don't think. And that is probably the hardest thing that fans are going to have to accept.
The only thing that's different between now and the day before Schindler buried that penalty at Wembley is Dean's got his money back. That lets, without putting too fine a point on it, that's what's happened. We spoke last week about the best time to sell the club was when we were in the Premier League. But if you believe the stories that Dean was doing this deal from Jimmy's hospital in Leeds, so the guy was clearly concerned he wasn't coming out of hospital possibly. The guy was seriously ill, so you can understand how that changes somebody's mind. But I think the issue for me is Nick was saying we've got a League One team. We've got a League One mindset. That's the bit. That's why we're going to end up a League One team, because we've got a League One mindset. Phil's already admitting defeat in a roundabout way in that review. I can't afford it. Can't afford it. So we're going to have to manage with what we do. And if we stop up, great. If we don't, we go down. And actually, from Phil's point of view, if his individual wealth is what he's saying, i.e. I'm funding the club out of my businesses, being a League One club will be much easier for him to manage. He'll be much more in control of that with a salary cap. And from an individual's point of view, for him personally, that's probably going to be better. But I go back to what I said before, that the biggest disappointment is we've wasted a once in a lifetime opportunity to make this club an average, decent Championship club. We were never going to be a Burnley. We're not that good. I don't think we're even a Crystal Palace. We're nowhere near that level. But we should have been top 6, top 8, top 10. That top 30 club thing that was a mantra we banged on for a long time. We'd every reason to believe after the Premier League promotion that was going to come to pass. And there's a lot of people who've got to take a lot of responsibility. But whether they do or not, I don't know. If you sat at home and eating liver and onions off your gold plate or whatever it was somebody said yesterday, it doesn't half ease the pain. From
my perspective and on the League One kind of side of things, and the sustainability side of it is now the point where you need to go back down the line of signing your Pilkingtons, your Rhodes, that kind of person. Because let's be honest, the wage bill, and I thought about this yesterday, and someone had said that they'd said last season that it was 18 million, and I'll be quite honest with you, I'd be absolutely amazed if a team full of people like Lossell, Emile Smith-Rowe, Mounier, etc., 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 was at 18 mil, and this one was at 19 mil, because working out just very, 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 very plain maths. There's about 30 players in this squad, and if you work out 19 million across the year, it's about 12,000, an average wage of 12,000. Well, I can imagine Schindler's on it, and probably double that. I can imagine Stearman's on around or more than that. I can imagine Keogh's probably the lesser side of that. Campbell's probably on more than that. Ward's probably on something around that, and Benza probably pushing towards 20. Backer pushing towards 20. Hogg pushing towards 20. Are we saying that these lads, I'm not going to say deserve it, but are we going to say that these lads are commanded? If we think that a sustainable model, or the club thinks that a sustainable model is spending less than 19 million, yet we've got all these players contributing to something that is 19 million, and we think that the League One, then quite obviously they are getting it wrong, aren't they? And they are getting these kind of transfers wrong. And actually, do we want this, what is perceived to be experience in the squad with your Stearmans and your Campbells and whoever, or do we want to go back to lads that are coming through, someone like this lad that's gone to Luton, Adebayor, is it, or whatever, Adebayor? Do we actually just want to sign lads like him and bring them in at 6 or 7 grand, and appreciate that 1 week he might put one over at bar from 2 yards out, but the next week he might score an absolute worldie, and we bring him through and we go on that journey with him almost. Is that what we enjoy seeing? As long as he gives 100% every week.
They've got to be of a certain quality to get a game at Championship level, Tristan. So that's always going to be a caveat to any signing. They've got to have the potential or the ability to play at that level. But what I want to see is good men. I want to see people who care about the football club. I'm not just wearing a shirt and drawing a wage. And I'm not saying that is the case with every Town player, by the way, just before everybody jumps in. But we don't have enough of those. You look around the team that got promoted out of the Championship, it was full of captains, full of people who led by example, who didn't accept people performing below standard. Somebody made a mistake, you make a mistake. Second mistake, you've made a mistake. And that was that's the bit of difference for me. We've got to try and get back to, and if we're going to be sustainable, by the way, we don't need a benefactor. In which case, we might as well the club should be fan owned. Then, if that's the case, if we're not having a benefit, if we're sustainable and we don't need to have an investment on an annual basis to operate, why do we need Phil? Why do we need Dean?
The question is though, Gaz, is actually that, and I don't know whether you were saying it tongue in cheek or not. Would we be better as a community club? Because actually, at least fans, when they want communication and are saying what happens, they'll get it. Because actually, the sustainability model of it is either you run as a club that's a business, or you run as a community asset. And is that what folk want? I don't know. I don't know whether you can. I don't know whether anyone could ever thrive at being a community asset.
The question is then, though, I think, Gaz, you said it last week, when people want fans to be the business owners of a football club, there's only going to be a handful who are actually going to have the wealth to do it. So it's either succeeding to someone who isn't a fan, or letting fans run it. It's a kind of, you caught in between two avenues, and when Dean Hoyle was at his best, he was both combined, wasn't he? And you know, for those couple of years where Dean Oil was properly engaging in the football club, especially that year we went up, it was special. But we are where we are, and unfortunately, there's more questions than there is answers at the minute. And I suppose that statement provided as much. I realise we've been waffling on for an hour, so I think it's only fair to wrap it up. This debate will, of course, rumble on into the week, and Carlos Corberán is now favourite to get the chop in the Championship. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. It'd be a bold decision after sacking the Cowleys and going in a different direction to then turn your back on that. That's for sure. We shall see what comes of it. Gentlemen, thank you all for your time. And there are people that drop questions in on the old Twitter that I just haven't got around to mentioning. So thank you for your engagement too. We'll be back next week, and hopefully we might be back with some points. We have Middlesbrough up next. It's a Warnock team, but they're also struggling at the minute, so you never know. We need something special. Cam, Gaz, Tristan, Nick, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, goodbye.